BHVR Interactive was founded in 1992, and despite over 34 years of experience, the company still operates like a newborn baby, completely incapable of forming any sort of coherent thought, let alone create a decent matchmaking system. Despite how long this company has been around, most of that time was spent as a small indie studio basically. The only real original game they had was Naughty Bear in 2010, which was honestly a complete flop despite its potential, whereas in the current day, Dead by Daylight is a complete flop in spite of its commercial success. I don't even need to explain what went wrong because they don't even try to hide it. This company is so out of touch, and it kind of seems as if they pride themselves on it, and people will defend them to the end of the earth because of their addiction to Dead by Daylight. The money machine never stops when everyone continues to throw money at them. It seems like they want the game to be as miserable as possible for killer players to gaslight survivors into thinking they're actually good at the game so that they spend more money. It's like having engagement-based matchmaking, but instead it's engagement-based game balancing. Because why would you spend all of those hard-earned dollars on making a proper MMR system, proper balance, proper game design? See, this is definitely at least partially a byproduct of the fact that this game has no competitors. And to be fair, I don't think it realistically ever will. Any new game in this genre that comes out is too different to appeal to the main player base, but even if they could be, Dead by Daylight is at this very too big to fail situation where they're being held up by so many licenses and things that other games just can't achieve. It kind of reminds me of when I was in university. There was a little grocery store on campus, and it was basically the only one that was realistically walkable in the immediate area. Because of that, the management did not care about the store at all. The employees would arbitrarily just make up the prices when you go up to the counter. They tried to charge a guy like $15 for a bag of pizza rolls once, and if you try to dispute the pricing at all or anything, they'll just raise it right in front of you, or just tell you to fuck off. You get overpriced dog shit, but some people will enter this toxic relationship with Dead by Daylight because it's convenient and almost satisfying dog shit. It's like a stool that has just passed perfectly, and that inner sense of relief that you feel is just at its peak. And the only way Dead by Daylight becomes a better game is if we see something similar to Marvel Rivals and Overwatch's situation. It would be kind of the opposite here because Dead by Daylight is like Rivals in the sense of having all the identifiable licensed characters. A new competitor to Dead by Daylight would need to account for this volume and so many different playstyles while still being a unique game. It would need a large roster of original characters. A decent concept for what this could look like is somewhat showcased through a Roblox game called Forsaken, though that game has a wide variety of flaws and being on Roblox is an issue in itself, but as a proof of concept it works for what could be a potential competitor. It's so odd to think about because yes, the game is in an awful state right now, but I also recall when I first started playing Dead by Daylight, how truly awful it was to be a new player. Dead by Daylight is a game where it's very difficult to pinpoint where exactly things went wrong, because in all fairness, the game has gotten significantly better over the years, but it's clear that they continue to make decisions and push the needle as much as they can towards gratifying one side of the player base more than the other, for the sake of manipulating them into spending more money. It makes BHVR a very intelligent company. They are making hundreds of millions of dollars per year. To call them stupid is not entirely accurate, though many of the people at BHVR are stupid. When the people working on the game are survivor mains that are really bad at the game, essentially opting to buff themselves at any opportunity, the lack of foresight becomes pretty obvious. What's so wonderful about this for BHVR is that they don't need any foresight or to put any effort in the game at all when they've already min-maxed their company. The actual stupidity, however, stems from some of their macro strategy. Why are we getting rid of the guy who made the marketing campaign for The Unknown? The most successful marketing the game has ever had. Why are technical issues with live streams so frequent and embarrassing? Why did you have everyone stare at a shed in the woods for 13 hours instead of a more reasonable 13 minutes or something? Why is Albie around in the creator program? Why aren't people in the creator program allowed to criticize the game at all beyond the few select things that are greenlit manually. Why are we telling people in the creator program that they can't play the game a certain way, that if you play killer, you can't be too aggressive? The people at Behavior are even trying to enforce the imaginary survivor rulebook onto their creators, but they have no issue with some of the toxic streamers in their own program because they play survivor. The fake positivity and virtue signaling is so ridiculous too, and it's completely counterintuitive to the narrative the people representing them have cultivated. This is a game that literally thrives and makes the majority of its money off of frustration and toxicity. The amount of content generated off of in-game chats alone is immense, and the amount of views it can get is undeniable. The ethical violations to continuously take advantage of factors such as these, while selling people an incomplete product that you don't actually care about, selling additional products that can be heavily changed at a moment's notice without any compensation or anything. It's very, very clear that this game is designed to be a honeypot for your mental and for your wallet. This honeypot will continue to exist and thrive for as long as Dead by Daylight has no one to truly challenge it. While the game is not a literal monopoly, it abuses monopoly-like circumstances to milk their consumers dry, without any lube on some fucking straight dry docking shit. A good analogy for this is, imagine you're in a game as Survivor and the killer is slugging everyone. The more fun way for the game to be played is if the killer hooked the survivors and did so without tunneling, but that's not optimal. That's not the optimal way for the killer to play the game. In the same sense, why would Behavior, a company, care to manage their business in the healthiest way when they can win the game easily because earning money is being incentivized to them in all of the wrong ways, and we can't really do a lot about it. We will remain slugged on the ground, and the bleed out bar will instead be our capital bar. In 4 minutes flat, Behavior can empty your bank account. All of this being said, Behavior has not reached the peak of predatory practices yet. For example, you can still grind to earn a lot of the characters and such in the game. You can grind to unlock a fair majority of cosmetics, and you know, a lot of new players may still end up purchasing with real money to skip a bit of that grind, but it's entirely optional with the exception of the licensed chapters. With how much Dead by Daylight has improved since 2020, I am still firmly in the belief that they have high potential of making the game actually good at some point, but in recent, it seems that they have focused on making the game more survivor-sided. The psychological techniques that they employ to convince people to spend more money is where the majority of my concern would be. I think at some point they will realize though that they need killer players to still play the game for the game to exist at all, and they will at some point come to their senses. Also, as a side note, I would really like to see PTBs have like an occasional experimental patch that's just something very wild that fundamentally alters the game. Like, I don't know, maybe not really a PTB, but something to mess around with for just the sake of a larger scale experimentation. An example would be like, oh, what if killers had a 5th perk slot? Or, you know, maybe try out different sets of base kit perks. Right now in the game we have base kit borrow time, but what if we changed that and instead made it base kit dead hard? Just things like that. Additional objectives, you know, maybe not just on the survivor side, giving killers a second objective as well. I'm not sure what exactly those could look like. Different kinds of end games. Remove the hatch. You know, there's so much. It's a whole different conversation, really. All in all, the game has so much potential. It still does, and it will for a long time. And Behavior would be stupid to not try to take it to the next level.